you can just get the QR code, then we'll just give us a follow. Okay, and for those that can stay all the way to the end and listen throughout the entire workshop, we have some prizes to be won at the end. We have a very short quiz section. Okay. Yep. So for today, we'll be going through Firebase. Firebase is one of Google's um, solutions. Then what we're going to do is that we're going to use a diary social media kind of application to show you what you can achieve with Firebase. Yep. So this workshop is run by three of us. So we have Ben, myself, and Faith. So I'm a year 3 CS student, and Ben.
Hi, I'm a year 3 CS student as well.
Yeah, I'm in year 2 CS student.
Yep. So we'll go through some of the basics of Firebase today. So in particular, authentication will be covered by Faith. I will cover Firestore, and then Ben will cover Firestore and storage as well. I'll touch a bit on Firebase functions, but won't have a very deep dive into it. Yep. Okay. So Hack for Good, signups will start next week. So just keep a lookout for the signups that will be sending out by the end of this week, sometime this week. And there will be a lot of attractive prizes to be won. Okay, just to plug it in here for a bit. Okay. Then just a very short precursor to Firebase. So Firebase is a Google SDK to help build and ship Android, iOS, and web apps. So they have a wide variety of functionalities such as hosting, database, storage, authentication, serverless functions, and real-time messaging. And if you include all the extensions that they have, all the plugins they have actually a lot of functionalities inbuilt, ready for you to use whenever you need to use them. So for today, we'll just be going through database, in particular Firestore, then storage, authentication, serverless functions. And I feel like we feel like these are the integral functionalities of Firebase. So we'll start off with setting up Firebase, then we'll do authentication, Firestore, cloud triggers, and storage. Okay, so there should be a link in the chat with the exercise, the GitHub repo link. Yep. So if you can try the GitHub repo link, you can pull it into your local development, your local folder, then run npm install in the root of the directory. Not found. Okay. Wait,
You make it public.
it should be public really. Let me have a look.
It's okay, I send them face on. I think face on is public.
Oh, guys, you can try the sandbox link. That one has like all the everything coded and the exercises not filled in. So yeah, there are two GitHub links. Just see whichever one works. Sorry about the inconvenience.
Yeah. Here we'll give 3 minutes just to clone the repository. Oh, okay. I think we might have sent out the wrong link. Okay, I'll just move on first. Okay, so Now we're gonna set up the Firebase client. Okay, maybe you can go to console.firebase.google.com and then yep, you can start creating a project. So when you enter into the website, you should see a create a project button. So just go ahead and click on that. And then once you're done, you'll come up to, I think, this page where they will say, set up the details of the Firebase client. So just give it a random name, something like DSC Backend Workshop or anything you want. Then for the purposes of this workshop, you can just disable Google Analytics. But actually, Google Analytics is very good for any web application. So in your spare time, you can try it out. Okay, then when you're done, create the project. Okay, we'll go on to this page. If I'm too fast, let me know. If I'm too fast, let me know. Okay, and then after you create the project, you should come to this page where they will ask you to get started by adding your Firebase to your app. So you click on the web version of it. So it's just the angle brackets with a slash in the middle. And then it should open up to a place where they ask you to register your app. So just give it any random nickname like backend or server or anything. Then you will be directed to the SDK page where you have the configurations over here. So at this page, the most important things you need to take note of are the API key, project ID, and the storage bucket. So everything else you can ignore for the purposes of this workshop. We just need the API key, project ID, and storage bucket. Okay, then once you have these values, the keys, then what you need to do next is to plug it into the env local file from the repo that you just cloned. Is this okay? Just drop the API key into the API key variable, then project ID, then storage bucket. Yeah. Yeah, just the important thing is you just need to copy paste the API key, project ID, and storage bucket into the env file over here. So you don't have to copy the whole code from the add Firebase SDK instruction because we already set that up for you. As long as you copy into the env file, that's fine. Then I'll go through in the next slide what the env file is for. Okay, so why do we not just copy paste the entire Firebase config? So the main thing to take note is configuration data in general are sensitive. So anyone with your configuration data can behave on your behalf, which means that bad actors can use your config details to spend your money. They can run illegal activities using your account, and then they will all be attributed to you. Or they can even steal like private data, such as like snoop around in the Firestore or look through user data. Okay, so the idea is that we want to save the data into some environment file and load the necessary API keys from the client. So long story short, we do not store it into the actual code base. We put it in some file, and then the app will draw from that file. And then we do not commit all these env files to version control. So we do not push this into Git, because the moment they are into Git, they are in the history, anyone can access it anytime. Yeah. So this is how it works. Instead of having the actual key just plugged in into the configuration object, what we do is that we do process.env.api key, just for example. This is how Next.js handles environment secrets. So in your different frameworks, such as Vue or Angular or anything, there are many ways that you can handle environment variables. Like Python has its own way also. So whichever project you're doing, it's best to look up the best practice in terms of handling environment secrets. So for us, just like we are doing a backend, so backend course, so we just don't care about how Next.js handles it. We just take it for granted. Just put it into the env file. Then if you want to read up more after this, just feel free. We have the resources in the slides. Okay. So this slide, we'll see whether your client works. So go to your project root and then run npm run dev, then go to localhost 3000 sign up page and see if it works. Okay, we'll take like maybe 3 minutes to do this part. Configuration not found. Where are you getting this error from? Is it from the console? Likely you didn't add the configuration properly. So do you put it in the env local file? .env.local. Yep. So you should look like .env.local and then it should look something like this. No quotes. You don't have to quote the key. Yeah, okay. If it works, it works. Yeah, so the idea is that when you plug stuff into the env file, you don't have to put quotation marks. It should be in the root of the project. It should be somewhere here, below public.
Alternatively, you can just create it from scratch.
Yeah. Oh, I think you didn't do npm install at the start. So you have to run npm install first. Yep. Okay, I'll just move on. Yep. Then along the way, if any more issues, just sound off anytime. Just feel free to interrupt. Okay. Oh, sorry. So we'll go on to Firebase authentication. This part is Faith. So Faith.
Okay, yeah, I'll take over. Wait. Okay. Hold on now. Okay. So right, in Firebase authentication, it's just basically enabling user sign-ins and sign-outs, and of course, like the creation of user accounts. So what exactly is authentication? Authentication, right, allows you to sign in and sign out, and allows you to create user accounts. And the thing about Firebase is it's very good for authentication because it makes the process of authenticating a user much easier and a lot simpler. So what do you do? Okay, the first thing is to go to this panel and you select authentication. The tab should be over there. It should be this tab over here highlighted in red. And then once you click authentication, you should be brought to this page which says authentication. By the way, all this is in the Firebase console. So if you can't find it, do let us know. And you go to the sign in method tab, and of course you click that. Then you should be brought to this page, which gives you a wide array of sign-in methods. The native ones are like email, password, phone, anonymous, and so on. And then there's a bunch of other extra like Google, Game Center, and so on. So for today, we'll be focusing on email and password. But if you want to use any others or experiment with any other like providers, go ahead. No one is going to stop you. But what we'll be showing you today is mainly pertaining to email and password. So yeah. So how do you enable this email and password authentication? So you just click on the email and password tab just now, and then you click enable to enable it. And then right after that, you can just click save. We won't be enabling the passwordless sign-in for this workshop, but you can toy around with it if you're free or if you want to try something new. Yeah. So what's next? Okay, so the next thing we have to do after I assume you have all enabled like the email password authentication is that you have to add a reducer. So for those of you who are not familiar with what reducers are, there are functions that take the current state and action as arguments and return like a new state result. In other words, right, to put this very simply, to sum up this definition, reducers make state management a lot easier. And if you don't know what state management is, right, okay, to put it simply, if you're familiar with React, right, you know that you need to keep track of the user's current state and so on and so forth, right? Like you need to keep track of what data is being put into the input field and so on. So those are things like state. And what a reducer does is it takes, all this state is very confusing. It just simplifies all of it. So why do we need a reducer to keep track of the state for this project, and what state are we keeping track of? So we need the reducer to manage changes in the state, which is whether the user signed in or not. So the state we're referring to is whether the user signed in or not and what user signed in. So yeah. So how do we add our reducers? So go to the library directory, the lib directory, and you should see it over here in red. And create a file called offstore.js if it's not already there. And we'll be writing our reducers inside this file called offstore.js. And before we start writing the reducers, you have to install the reducer. So a common reducer would be Zustan, which we'll be using. So just run the command npm install Zustan in the terminal. Or if you want to use Redux, you can also try, but we'll be showing you how to use Zustan. But any reducer is fine. Yeah. Right. I'll give you like maybe 1 minute to like quickly like create everything. Oh wait, okay, so I don't know if Zustan is already installed, but if it's not installed, you can install it using that command over there. But I think it should be pre-installed in the GitHub. So yeah. Anyways, I think there's more than enough time for you people to install relevant and create the relevant files. So I'll move on. So right, in offstore.js, right, what you do is you create a reducer here and you use the create function. And this is a Zustan function, by the way. So how this create function works is it keeps track of the initial state, okay, the React initial state. So the user is initially now indicating that there's nobody logged in at first into the app. And so what is this login and logout? These two things are called reducers. Okay, and what reducers do is they handle changes in state. Okay, so they change the state for you, and if you know like how they work, right? It's like immutable and stuff. Anyways, so to simply put, right, what this login does, right, is it simply takes a user as an argument and it logs the user in. So it assigns the current state user to be the user that wants to log in. And so what logout does, right, is the exact opposite of login, which is it takes the user and it puts the user to null. I mean, it assigns the user to the value of null, which means that the user is logged out, aka there's no user. So this reducer is basically what is going to change the global authentication state, and is what and we're going to see later on how Firebase is going to come into play. Okay, so now, right, what we need to do, right, is now that we have the global state set up, the global authentication state set up, we need to add in a listener. So if you're familiar with OOP and observer pattern and stuff, right? What a listener is basically it basically observes changes in the state of authentication. So it's sort of like an observer pattern. So why we want to do this is we want to observe a level of privacy, if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, which you have learned in 2030. So right, over here we are importing our reducers that we have written just now. And then in this use effect, right, what this on-off state change thing is, right, is a Firebase listener. So it will listen for changes in the authentication state and update the global state accordingly using the reducers. So these two reducers are used to update the global state of authentication to reflect what is listened in, to reflect what is going on in Firebase. So if you're confused, just know that what this thing does is this function on off state change does is it listens for changes in the authentication state of Firebase, and it uses the reducers we've written just now to update the global state in React or Next.js accordingly. So yeah. And so this is just calling the function. Yeah. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to create a sign-in page. So how do we create a sign-in page? First thing you need to do is you need to get a current user. How are you going to get a current user? Of course, you can call this method use of store. Okay. And this use of store is basically from if you look at the import here, is from the of store, which should already be written for you. And then this use effect here will immediately direct the user to the dashboard page if the user is signed in. So if the user is now, then this will not happen. Yeah. And so what I want to bring your attention to is this sign in with email and password method. So this is actually a method in Firebase that allows you to sign in with your email and your password. So there are three arguments to this: the authentication, which you will receive from the off store, I think, and the data, the email, which is the input, your email, and the password. And so this method, right, when you call it, it directs you to the dashboard right after you're signed in, and assuming you're signed in properly, and if not, it will alert you that you're not. So what this method does is basically enables the Firebase sign in. It's the API for it. You can Google for the exact syntax and API if you want. But yeah, I'll give you some time to write this down. Do sound off if you have any issues. Okay, I think I'm just gonna continue. So, if you didn't catch that fully, you can always refer to the slides to know. It's not that much to code, honestly, to code out everything. So yeah, anyways, in the interest of time, let's just move on. So so next you'll be creating a sign up page. So the sign up page is exactly the same as the sign in page. Honestly, you just need to copy and paste everything on a sign up page. Sorry, the sign in page, and make and put it in the sign up page. So the only difference between a sign in page and a sign up page, right, is this create user with email and password. So this thing will basically replace what you saw just now, which is sign in with email and password. And so this is the Firebase method to create a new user in Firebase. And it does virtually the same thing as the sign in with user email and sign in user with email and password, in a sense that it signs the user in, but instead this one creates a new account and the user is signed in. So as you can see, the logic and everything is exactly the same. You get the user and yeah, everything's the same. So I'm just gonna skip over this. So yeah. So now how do you enable signups? Okay, so for us, right, we decided that you don't have to have a specific sign up page, because honestly most apps don't really have that. So honestly, signing out of Firebase is super easy. We decided to just include this in the app bar, and the app bar is located in layouts default layouts.js. So it's in the layouts directory, and it's in this file basically. And so what you need to do is, right, you just need to have a button and then call the sign out API. Yeah, this is the Firebase this is the Firebase function that enables you to sign out of whatever user is currently signed in. So this is quite straightforward. Feel free to put the sign out button anywhere you want. This app bar, right, is only available in our dashboard. So it doesn't because it's not on our sign in page, because it doesn't make sense, because you wouldn't be on the sign in page if you're signed in. So yeah, this is quite simple. So I will just quickly go through this. Yeah. So I think that's about all for authentication. So if you want to try a little exercise, right, you can try our exercise, which is to allow users to reset their passwords while signed in. The solutions, right, you can view them on GitHub. So at this link over here. And if you want to refer to the API as to how to manage users, right, or sign users in and out, you can just refer to this link over here. This one contains like the relevant API you need to write. So do try it out when you're free, and I'll pass the time over to Ezekiel. Thank you. Ezekiel.
Yep. Just to clarify, I think the solutions will be sending them out at the end. So if you try to access the link now, I don't think it works. Yep. So at the end, we'll send the repo links. Okay, thanks, Faith. So we've covered authentication. Now we're going to build on top of authentication using Firestore. So this is the main bulk of the application, which is to CRUD diary entries. So what is CRUD? CRUD is a very common term that we use when we talk about databases. So it stands for create, read, update, and delete. So these are the 4 fundamentals to any kind of database architecture. So today we're going to CRUD some diary entries using Firestore. So what is Firestore? Firestore is a NoSQL provided by Google's Firebase, and is used to store data, typically user data. So some of you might be aware of SQL. I think we have quite a lot of year 2, year 3s here, so I think probably touch 2102 or some other database mod. Otherwise, it's fine. If you know SQL database, it should translate quite well over to NoSQL. If you don't, then basically NoSQL is an alternative to the conventional way of handling databases. So in general, NoSQL databases are slightly easier to use and lightweight. So that's the idea. It's easier, lightweight, fast performance. Yeah, but as with everything, there are costs. So it depends on what your app requires. Okay, and this is how a general Firestore setup will look like. So in our situation here, we have a collection. of diary entries. And then within each collection, we have a single diary entry. We have a bunch of diary entries. And then with each diary entry, we have a bunch of fields. Okay, so if you have done SQL, you probably think that this is a bit weird because we have another collection within each document. But that is how NoSQL works in general. Yeah. So just to go a bit in depth, this is how it looks like. Okay, so each user will have, so at the very top of the hierarchy, we have a collection of users, and then we have a bunch of users. So user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So user 1, 2, 3 has another collection within itself, which is all the workouts that they have. So for example, jogging, easy yoga, super yoga. And then for jogging, it has its own collection of history. And then easy yoga has its own collection of history, super yoga, same thing, a collection of history. So you can see that the collections can get quite deeply nested, but they are nested where they are relevant. So the yellow stuff represent a collection, and then the blue stuff represent a document. Okay, then let's set up Firestore in our project. So what we do now is we export the DB. So what we do is get Firestore from the Firebase app. So Firebase app was the one where we configured at the start of the workshop. Then DB will represent the Firestore the Firestore object that we are getting from the app that we created. Okay, and then over here, what we do is that we are trying to add a diary entry. So the first step we need to do is we need to get a reference to the collection of diary entries. And then once we have that reference, what we tell Firebase is that we want to add some document to this set of collections, so diary entries, and then the particular document we want to add is an entry. Okay, so I use a keyword reference here, right? So what exactly is a reference? So a reference is similar to how a librarian will tell you the section, shelf, and index number of a particular book you're looking for. So when I say I get a reference from Firestore, I don't actually have the object with me right now. I just have the ability to tell Firebase that I want this document when I need it. So it's like for example, I want to find the book Dummy's Guide to Firebase. Then librarian is like Firebase, right? So you say, okay, it's at the IT category under shelf A, row 13. So whenever I need the book, I will go to that location myself and then get the book that I require. So maybe something that is more translatable would be that the reference contains the ID of the document, similar to how every book has their own ID also. And that's how we identify where and how to find them. So now we know how references work. We can appreciate this a little bit better. So what we do is that we get a reference of the collection from the DB called diary entries. With this reference, we tell Firebase that we want to add a document known as entry into the diary entries collection. Then what we do is that we separate this database logic into its own file, so that in the front end portion of it, we can run something like a handle submit entry handler, and then we just call the add diary entry that we created. So every time the user clicks on submit to create a new entry, then what they do is that what happens is that we'll call the function that we created to create an entry with Firebase. Okay, and for delete, it's more or less the same. So whenever we receive some ID from the user that they want to delete, so for example, I click delete on my second diary entry, then I retrieve the ID from the object that I store in the array of entries, and then I tell Firebase to delete this particular ID from this particular collection. So as you can see, we get a reference to the document in the diary entries collection. So document db diary entries ID. Now we have the reference to the document. With this reference, we tell Firebase that we want to delete this document, and then we'll delete the document from Firestore. So it's actually quite straightforward. What we do is that we get references to things that we want, get references to collections and documents, and then with these references, we conduct some function on them, whether we want to delete the document, add the document, or we want to read the document. So just one line, we have achieved CRUD. Then here is a bit tricky, but here's where more or less where the magic happens. So in the first line, we have get user entries query. So what this does is that just ignore the underlying logic for now. Just assume that get user entries query, what it does is that it gets all the references of a particular user's diary entries. So this query just says, Firebase, give me all the references for this particular user. Then in the next step, we have on snapshot. So what on snapshot does is that it will alert us whenever there's a change to that query that we supply to it. Okay, so just to repeat, on snapshot, what it does is that whenever there's a change to a particular user's entries, we want to be alerted of that change. Okay, then we throw it in a use effect. So then we have a callback function at the bottom, which says that every time there's a change, we want to conduct the following changes. We want to conduct the following functions. So the first one is we are trying to add all the entries that have been added into Firebase into our client. Okay, which means the change has been propagated in the database. We want to be alerted of that change so that we can tell our users of the latest updates. And then similar for remove, what we do is that there has been documents that have been removed from Firebase. So we are alerted that the some removal event has happened, and we want to remove these entries from the client's UI. Okay, so it's a whole bunch of logic, but the idea is quite simple. We just have entries to add. It's just basically all the changes, and we want all the documents that were added. And then if we have a bunch of entries to add, we'll just push them into the current set of entries. And then similar for remove, we get all the IDs of those that were removed, and then we filter them out from our existing entries. Okay, so this looks like a lot of logic, but it's nothing Firebase related. It's entirely front-end related. If you can find a simpler way to do this, then it'll be a lot cleaner. But the fundamental idea is that it's very easy for us to just hook up some listener to Firebase and then listen for changes on the fly. Okay, so this is how it works. So user submits a new entry. Then what happens is that our app will create an entry on the Firestore. So you make a request to Firebase. Then Firebase receives the new entry and add it into the Firestore collection. Okay, and then at this point, Firebase alerts all the listeners that a change was made to the collection of diary entries, which means every single app will be alerted to the change of the collection of diary entries, which means if the change involves my account and your account and somebody else's account, all of us will be alerted to that change. So what happens is that individual apps will receive a notification that a new entry was added, and we'll update the list of entries that we are showing to the user with the latest information, all separately done through the use of listeners. Then all the users will see the new entry. Okay, so this is the power of using listeners. This is all real time. So if this part is a bit confusing or you have any questions, just throw it in the pigeonhole link that we have in the chat. Then we'll answer them at the end. Okay. Okay, so now you have understood how it all works. So it's very simple. We just need to add one functionality to edit entries. Then after we have done the edits, we will listen for them. So it's more or less the same, just a small hint. It's more or less the same thing, right? Over here, we use add document. Here, we use a delete document. Then we just use update document to edit. And then in order to listen for the changes, just use change type equals to updated. Everything else should be the same. So try this out in your free time, then refer to the solutions after. Okay, then on to the one of the strongest parts of Firebase, in my opinion, is cloud functions. So we can automate your app. We are going to track each user's diary entries count through cloud functions. Just a disclaimer, we will not be going to I will advise you not to follow along this part. Just try to listen, because in order to follow along, you need to set up billing. So don't do it in a rush. Just make sure that you get everything correct and don't get a huge bill on your account. So what is cloud functions? So cloud functions are basically serverless functions. I'm sure you have heard of that before. So the pipeline is quite simple. We write some function. So it could be a super simple function like we receive a number, we add the number 10 to it, then we return the value. So the function could be receive number 19, we add 10 to it, that's 29, we output the value 29. So that's a function. Then we define some event. So the event could be an asynchronous call. Let's say you're using a Telegram bot and your user wants to calculate what is the 19 plus 10. So what you do is that your user inputs 19, you make a call to Firebase functions, then that will be an event. Otherwise, you can also define the event as, let's say, a change in Firestore. So if let's say you have a new entry, then we want it to trigger. So then we define the event as run this function when there's a change in Firestore. What happens is that this will trigger an event, and then after that we deploy the function, and then we just passing the result. So the power of this is that we don't actually have to run our own server 24/7, just listening for the latest updates when our user make a request. Firebase does this entirely for you. You just need to upload the function onto Firebase and pay as your users use your functions. So that's the power of this. And also there's a very strong logging feature for Cloud Functions. So that's great. Yeah, so I'm just going to breeze through this part. Set up Cloud Functions, you need to enable Firebase CLI. And then one thing for Windows users, I face this problem. If you have some error about running the Firebase script, you can just set execution policy and everything, just copy in. Yep. Then yeah, look through the slides when you're setting this up on your own. Just set up the cloud functions. Yeah, we just want functions. Yep. Okay, so we'll be doing cloud function triggers today. So they are only one of many cloud function capabilities. So like I said earlier, we can do asynchronous calls and a lot. I mean, you can even do cron jobs if you want, I guess. But today we just look at triggers because they are the most straightforward and the strongest. So another chunk of code. So the first portion, we define the function as exports.increment diary entry count. So you can find this file under functions/index. Yep. So if you want to have a look at it, you can go to functions/index. So that's where all your functions will go. So we define our first function to be increment diary entry count. So as it should be quite obvious, what we're doing is that every time we have a new entry into our diaries collections, we will run this function, and this function will increment the count. So the second line and the third line will be for the particular document in diary entries. Every time there's a new create, we want to run the following functions. Okay, so it's just syntactic stuff. Document diary entries, then on create. So every time there's a new create in diary entries, let's run the following function. We get the new value. So snap.data gives us a new value. So let's say I added a new diary entry, like let's say I'm happy today. So then I'll get a new value with a text field, I'm happy today. Then what happens is that we will increment the count at the bottom. So I will go into the next slide to go deeper into this part. Okay, so maybe you'll be wondering why we need to have a separate collection to tally the count. So in general, Firestore, when we count all the documents in a collection, we will incur additional costs. So if let's say I have 10 entries, there will be 10 reads. If I have 1,000 entries, there will be 1,000 reads. So that will incur a lot of cost to your billing. And then furthermore, if the count is something that is frequently calculated in an app, we can save the count to improve the app performance. So just cache the result in some collection. So if you can see over here, we have a collection of diary entries count. Then we have a bunch of usernames. So in this case, we have tester@gmail.com and he has a count of 2. So in the previous slide, we see here all this logic happening. All it does is that it just updates the count to 2, updates the count to 3, or -1 to 1, depending on the changes. So in depth, what happens here is that we get a reference to the document that keeps track of a particular user's entry count. Okay, so with that reference, what we're trying to do is we want to increment its current value by 1. So we get the document value, then we set the documents field to the new value plus 1. So as you can see, doc.data.count plus 1. So a lot of syntax here, but just go through it slowly. I think you'll get it. Okay. So similar with increment, we also have decrement. So every time we receive some deletion event in the Firestore, automatically this cloud function will trigger and decrement the count. Yeah, and then this is the front end portion of it. So what we do is that similar to what we did for diary entries, we are on snapshot listening to the entries, the entry count updates. So every time the user adds one more, we'll get alerted that, oh, there's a change in the count. So then we update the UI to reflect the latest changes. So if I have 4 now and I added 1, it will automatically update me to 5. Then I'll update it accordingly. Okay, so using listeners as before, same thing on snapshot. Yeah. Then after you write all your functions, so after you've written everything here, so like exports.decrement diary entry count, then what happens next? We have to deploy them to Firebase. So essentially what we're doing is that we're saving all these logic into Firebase. And then if you enter the Cloud Functions page, you will see your list of functions that you have successfully uploaded. And then the cool thing is that you can see the number of requests you had in the last 24 hours. You can go into each individual function to check out the logging. So errors or maybe places that you might want to see like some debugging, you can log it in. Then you will see them in the functions log. Okay. Okay, then just a simple exercise. Just use Cloud Functions to track the total number of letters that a user has posted in their lifetime. So letters, I mean by alphabets or characters, anything you want to call them. So just track the total number of entries, maybe like characters that they have added into their diary entries. So yep, just do this in your free time. I have the code set up already, I think. Yeah, in the solutions. Okay, then that's all for the Firestore portion of things. Ben will take over part 2 of Firestore. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So now we'll be going through Firestore again, but this time we'll be modifying the user profiles. So basically, for Firestore, for the user profiles, what we'll do is that we'll have a name for the user as well as a bio for the user along with their user email. So there will be a form where you can modify and input the name and the bio. So this is all just the front end code, and this has nothing to do with Firebase at all. So okay, so now this is the layout of the Firestore for the users collection. So we have a collection of user profiles called users, and then in this collection we'll have multiple documents of user, and in this case we set the user document to the user's email, and there's a reason for it, which I will share later. So in this case, over here, you are able to see that for this user profile called backendtest@gmail.com, it has a name and a bio field. So for the Firestore creation and update, what we'll do is that we'll actually set the documents. Okay, so it will firstly take in email, a name, and a bio as seen in the document contents on the previous slide. So in order to update this, what we have to do is that we have to call the database from earlier, and then we want to add it to the user's collection. And this last parameter here is actually the document ID of the document to be added. And for the next parameter of set document, you will take in the details of you're basically specifying the layout of the document of the document. So in this case, it will be email name and bio, which we take in from the parameters here above. So food for thought will be so if let's say we do not specify the document ID here, what will then be the document ID shown in the Firestore collection? Right. So similarly for deleting details, we are basically just deleting the document that is tied to this user email. So in this case, we are specifying the ID of the document to be deleted. Hence, earlier, if you recall, when we set the document, we are using the email here. But of course, there are better ways to do this. But for the sake of the workshop and for clarity, we implemented it this way. So now will be there's an exercise for you all to do, which is to try and obtain the user details from Firestore itself. So basically this link here provides refers you to the API on how to do it, and it shouldn't take that long. So maybe I'll give you all about 5 minutes to try it out. Okay, so hopefully you all were able to try the user, trying to obtain the user details. But if you all were unable to, it's okay as well. So maybe I'll just go through the solution quickly. Yeah, so here is the solution for obtaining the current image of the user. So firstly, we have to create a reference to, wait, sorry, this is the wrong one. Yeah. So firstly, we have to get the user details together with and append the email of the user, as in over here, to get the document reference. And then once we have gotten the reference, we attempt to get the document itself. And if this document exists, we can just return the document.data, which is the data of the snapshot. Otherwise, in this case, we can either return null or we can throw an error. So back to the workshop. So now we move on to Firebase storage, where we will try to extend your profile with display pictures. So how is Firebase storage different from Firestore, since they are both databases of some sort, right? So actually Firebase storage actually allows one to store like multimedia files, whereas like Firebase storage is more on storing like data points like JSON files. So this is an example of the Firebase storage that we have set up. So as you can see, it follows a very typical directory layout where you have the name, the size, the file type, as well as the last modified date. So in this case, but if you notice that most of these names do not have the type appended at the end. So in this case, like backendtest@gmail.com does not have a .jpeg. So to set up, just like the authentication and the database, we initialize the get storage using the Firebase that we had previously. So now, how do we upload a profile picture? Firstly, we always have to create a reference to the storage. And also, in this case, since we are creating a file, we want to set the name of the file over here. So in this case, as you can see here, backendtest@gmail.com. This email is actually set here at user email. So this second parameter allows us to define like the file name that we want it to be saved to in the storage. And then after that, we upload this file to the image reference. And then once this is done, we can give a success message, and we can also handle errors here, which is not shown. Next, to remove the profile picture, similarly, we create an image reference to the profile picture that we want to remove. And then all we have to do is just delete object to remove that reference. So once that asynchronous function returns, then we can like redirect the user back to a page. And if there's an error, we can like alert the user of an error, which is all not implemented here. So how do we then edit our profile picture? So if you think about it, editing is actually just deleting and then re-uploading. So even though in this case, it may be a bit expensive to do so, but for the sake of the workshop, since this is a backend workshop, we won't cover the front-end optimizations for this. So now I'll give you all another 5 minutes to perhaps add an image to storage, which was shown earlier, and then to display the image on your profile page. So this is the document the storage where you may find functions that could help you. And then more importantly is to view it from the web perspective. So you may have to use another function on top of these files here. So maybe 5 minutes. Yeah, so hopefully you all were able to attempt it and get your and was able to display your profile image. So now maybe I'll share how we went about doing this. So this is the solution. Okay, so firstly, we have to get the reference to the storage. And if you notice, compared to the other functions, we did not require a user email here. because in this case, we are actually going to query the entire storage, and then we are going to look specifically for this user email. So that is what this whole chunk here is doing. Basically, what it's doing is that we are going to list all the reference in the storage, and then for each reference, we are going to find whether the name matches our user email, and then we set that reference to we set that item to our image reference variable on top here. Otherwise, if there's an error, we are just supposed to handle the error here. But in this case, I'm just gonna reassign it to null. So if in this case, if we were able to find an image reference, then we have to get a download URL of this image reference. The reason for getting this download URL is because for front end, they require a URL to render the image. Hence, we have to do this step. So once this function returns, we can set the image URL to the respective URL, and then we return the overall image URL as seen here. So that is the solution. So now we'll be moving on to the bonuses. So these bonus questions are quite difficult. It may be difficult for some of you, and don't worry about it. Yeah, but hopefully through these bonuses, you'll be able to better appreciate the content taught in this workshop, as well as because you are able to apply it to very different and new contexts. So the first bonus is deleting a user account details, profile picture, as well as the diary entries, right? So don't forget, all these user account details, diary entries, and profile pictures are all stored in different places with different collection references. So do keep that in mind when you're trying this bonus. The second bonus, which is even more trickier, will be the sharing of average moods with the public. So currently, our application is just for one user to create their own diary entries, right? So this bonus basically is trying to create a social media. You're trying to enhance your application to make it become a social media platform for diary entries, where each user is able to share their moods with other users. If you're interested on the solution of these two bonuses, you can approach any one of us, like in private chat. Yeah, but we won't be going through the solutions for this with everyone. Yeah, so do give this a thought and try it out as well. So finally, we reached the end of this workshop. So there are some key takeaways that we hope that you'll be able to bring with you after this workshop. So basically, Firebase is a simple tool that can actually give your apps a whole new dimension, because it's a one-stop solution for your database, your authentication, multimedia storage, and a lot of other functionalities, mainly backend functionalities. So of course, Firebase is not the only tool that can do this out there. There are other alternatives like Supabase, which is a SQL version of Firebase. So if you're not a fan of NoSQL, because of its limitations, you can use Supabase, which actually uses SQL. Or alternatively, if you feel like it and you're quite free, you can write your own server using like a backend framework like Django, Ruby, or Ruby on Rails. So yeah, so now we'll move on to, we actually have a quiz for you. Thanks for staying all the way. So there are like Grab vouchers for you to grab, yes, if you perform well in the quiz. Yeah, so maybe Brian will share the quiz. Yeah, so Brian has posted the quiz. So once maybe like 75% of the participants have answered the quiz, we'll end it. In the meantime, if you have any questions regarding like the content thought or like you just feel like that there are certain areas that we could improve on, just feel free to message either one of us. Okay, maybe you just give a while more in case anyone else still wants to participate in the quiz. Okay, I'll be ending the quiz now. So yeah, these are the results of the quiz. if you did not get the answer correct, don't worry. And we hope that you are able to understand why you got the answer wrong, as well as why is a particular answer correct. So it looks like the second question had quite a fair number of divided answers. So yeah, that was quite interesting to see. Yeah, so for the winners, we'll be looking at those people that got all 3 questions correct, and yeah, we'll do a lucky draw for that. So now I'll just be collating the names of those people that get everything correct. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to send it in the chat, and we can answer your questions. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Okay, so I'm currently tabulating the winners. So cause if you're a lucky winner, I need you to send us your email. Yeah, so give me a while. Yeah, so these are the names of the people that were able to get all the answers correct. So 7 of y'all will have one of y'all will get a chance to walk away with a $10 Grab voucher. So hopefully you will win it. Yes, all the best. Okay, congratulations to Dennis. Could you send one of the hosts your emails so that we can verify you? Yeah. If not, if there are no other questions, thanks everyone for coming to the workshop. Yeah, hope you all picked up something new from here. Thank you.